Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out for the work session today. Glad to see some people here. Glad to see some returning guests. He's not paying any attention. Discussion item number 1 for the work session is a fireworks ordinance review. Back in, I want to say around budget time, Councilmember Belton recommended the council review the city's existing fireworks ordinance, banning the sale and use of consumer fireworks within the city limits. The council subsequently directed staff to gather information for consideration of possibly amending the ordinance. So, Chief.
Don't ask.
Good evening, Jim.
Good evening. All right, the current city ordinance forbids the sale and use of fireworks within the city limits. The lone exception is for professional pyrotechnic displays approved by the governing body. The state statute does allow for the sale and use of consumer fireworks with the exception of bottle rockets, which are banned across the state. The statute does have a home rule provision that allows local jurisdictions to determine whether to permit sales and use of fireworks and to issue permits and regulate seasonal fireworks stands. The state statute also limits the dates that seasonal fireworks stands can be open to June 27th through July 5th. Like Gardner, most cities in Johnson County, as well as the unincorporated areas of the county, do not permit the sale or use of fireworks. The 3 exceptions are the cities of Spring Hill, Edgerton, and DeSoto. The tangible benefit of repealing the ban would be the revenue generated by permit sales or permit fees and sales tax. The permit fees vary depending on the jurisdiction, and some cities waive the fees for charitable organizations. In our neighboring jurisdiction, Edgerton charges $500 for each permit, and Spring Hill charges $1,000. Edgerton had 3 stands in 2015, and Spring Hill had 7. The permit fees vary across the state depending on the jurisdiction. Some cities, I already covered that. Salina had the highest fee we could find at $5,000 per stand. The number of stands also factors into the potential income. In our neighboring jurisdictions, Edgerton, $500 at 3 stands apiece, $500 for each stand, and in Spring Hill, 7 stands at $1,000. I contacted a Kansas fireworks wholesaler to try to determine what the potential for overall sales for a city the size of Gardner might be, factoring area competition for sales. The estimate I was given is between $150,000 to $250,000 in sales. There are a number of things that factor into that, including weather, the level of advertising for the stands, and the day of the week the holiday falls on. Out of the sales tax money collected, the city gets 1.5% of the total. At the high end of the sales estimate, $250,000, the city would collect $3,750. Adding that to the permit fees collected using Spring Hill as an example, with 7/10 at $1,000, the city would realize $10,750 in fireworks-related income in that scenario. Although this revenue potential exists, there are some valid reasons for having and maintaining a ban. Number 1, they're dangerous. For example, on July 4th of 2015, 27 patients were treated at the KU Med Center for fireworks-related injuries, primarily from mortars and sparklers. Of those 27, 7 patients, ranging in age from 3 to 37 years old, were hospitalized, 3 for traumatic finger amputations, and 1 patient for burns over 25% of his body. Olathe Medical Center, which is closer to us, does not report fireworks-related injuries. This picture is Juan Pierre-Paul of the New York Giants, if you remember, is in the news. He did this actually last summer. He was lighting a mortar while he was holding a mortar in his hand, and the mortar exploded. Although an argument can be made that many fireworks injuries are due to careless and/or reckless behavior, It's not just those lighting the fireworks that are injured. In Kansas in 2014, bystanders accounted for over 30% of all the injuries reported. This doesn't look anything like my neighborhood when I was growing up. We never used shields. But the cape does look familiar. Lifting the ban also opens the door to more individuals prone to careless and reckless behavior when they might otherwise not engage in this inherently dangerous activity. Children are also very susceptible to the danger. From 2011 to 2014 in Kansas, 35% of all fireworks-related injuries reported in the state were to children under the age of 12. Fireworks are also responsible for increased fire hazards. On July 4th in a typical year, far more fires are reported on July 4th than any other day of the year, and fireworks account for 2 out of 5 of those fires, more than any other cause identified. The next reason, they're loud. This is essentially a quality of life issue for Gardner's residents. Although there are varying degrees of disruption based on your proximity to where the fireworks are being shot, for most residents there is no escaping the noise. Seniors, small children, individuals with autism and PTSD, and animals are particularly affected by the noise. Ground pollution and cleanup is also a significant issue for communities that allow fireworks. The residual trash is rarely cleaned up entirely, if at all, and it is often not limited to the discharge location, meaning nearby residents also have to deal with the issue. From a police and fire perspective, there is no public safety interest served by lifting the fireworks ban. The additional safety hazards, the increase in calls for service, and the time and resources required to process violations, which often requires the storage and destruction of confiscated fireworks, all put a strain on the city's resources. This is in addition to the resources already committed to the city's 4th of July celebration at Celebration Park, which the city is actively trying to grow. With that in mind, it is my recommendation and that of Fire Chief Kirk that the ordinance banning the sale and use of fireworks in the city of Gardner not be repealed. That's all I've got for that part. I am prepared if the council decides to further explore this issue. I am prepared to provide additional information on the key points for the council to consider in revising the ordinance.
Thanks, Chief. I'd hang tight. I do want to open the floor for public comments. If there's anybody in attendance that would like to make comment regarding the discussion item, now would be your opportunity to step forward and state your name and address for the record and be heard.
Good evening. Adam Cox, 285 East Skylark Street. Yeah, not really a fan myself, just because of the, dangers and, all the things that can happen, that type of thing. Just want to mention, if the council is determined to go ahead and repeal this, one thing I didn't notice, maybe it was there, but I didn't see it in the quick scan of the surrounding cities' ordinances, was a provision to, in the case of weather conditions such as extreme drought, or I think they call it red flag warnings where there's heavy winds and whatnot, please put something like that in there. If we have continued, like last year was the warmest year on record and it's dry as a bone and all that type of thing, there has to be some wording in any ordinances considered to where you can go ahead and, act on behalf of the safety of all the residents and property values and whatnot, and I think it's also, I remember several of the council members talking about, was it second-tier housing, like, more expensive housing and the like and all that, and, are folks interested in that, interested in a free fire zone community, so I think those things need to be considered when you're talking about, a certain one of the cities comes to mind that really is just like a war zone around July 4th that I lived in at one point. So in our metropolitan area. So it can get a little out of hand if people aren't responsible. So that's it.
Adam, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Chris Lang. Me and my business partners, we manage and run fireworks stand locations, and a couple in the cities that you've mentioned here tonight.
Hey, Chris, can I get you to state your address for the record?
Well, unfortunately, I don't live in the Gardner area anymore.
Well,
I did. I live in Perry, Kansas, 2674 Osage Road in Perry, Kansas.
Very good, thank you.
But we have an interest in trying to help you generate revenue for one, and to get fireworks available to the people that do want to use them, and hopefully they do use them properly. There's always going to be somebody that's going to do something wrong, and it can be done with more things than just fireworks too. I mean, they abuse alcohol all the time too, but that's a whole other case. The thing with Pierre-Paul and a lot of other incidents, a lot of those happen with illegal fireworks. Those are things that, you get under the table, not at a typical fireworks stand. I'm just trying to throw out some things that I can think of here. If you maybe consider shortening your time selling period, maybe designate certain hours of the day and days that it can be even, fireworks can even be discharged. Might limit, the necessity for the extra help that you'll need to manage it for a week long. As for the fire ban, that's a touchy subject also, because we spend a lot of time, revenue, and resources trying to get set up to run fireworks, and we have a lot of money out of pocket before we've ever sold anything. So if you were to come in and tell us after we're set up that we can't sell anymore, we're pretty much stuck with that, plus the loss of the permit fees and everything else that usually come with that. So I can honor the thought of banning the use of them, but to say we couldn't sell them would be kind of devastating to us. We've had to deal with that once already. I'd like to look at other options, of how to protect both of us from that happening. I get kind of nervous when I get up in front of people, so I'm trying to think of what else might come to mind that I'd like to share with you.
Thank you, Tom. The council vice president actually has a question.
Okay.
You don't mind? I noticed like a lot of them will ban bottle rockets. Is there a certain class of fireworks that sometimes might be disallowed and then others are allowed?
Right now, Missouri allows anything on a stick, rockets. Kansas does not, and I can understand why. When I was a younger person in my teens, I watched a rocket on a stick. It's called a butterfly or something bees, and it went up and it came back down before it ever went off, and then it went off right as it hit this guy's grass field and did catch it on fire. I can kind of tend to agree with the ones on the stick being a hazard. The mortars that come out of the tubes, typically you're not going to see that happen. I mean, that very seldom would ever happen. And we try to educate our customers on how to use them properly. If they were to use a cinder block or bricks or something to hold that mortar in place, it has nowhere to go but up. And they always have a good enough discharge, powder to get them up in the air far enough that they're not going to come back down and then blow up. I've never really seen that happen, and I've shot fireworks for years, and I've never had anybody come back into my stands and tell me that that's happened either. But ones on a stick, yeah, you could possibly see some hazards with that. So I don't have a problem if you don't allow us to sell anything on a stick. That's not a big deal. Now, it's not going to stop your consumers. They'll just go over to Missouri and get them, but I can't do anything about that. But we would do everything in our power to educate our customers, explain to them what they do, even give handouts on proper use of and lighting techniques. And then, like I said, maybe you just kind of limit the amount of time that they can actually discharge fireworks. Would help you with your police force and the fire department. I think that's all I can think of. Anybody else have anything else to say? This is my business associate, Mike Young. And we're all natives of this area. I mean, we used to live right outside of town here.
We all got run out by the intermodal. We used to be Gardner people. My wife and I, Julie, my name's Mike Young, we just moved further west out of town when the intermodal bought us out. But we've been doing fireworks for 20-some, 30 years now. We've never had any issues as far as liability problems, that kind of stuff. We always play by the rules as far as state rules, county rules, city rules, whatever, and then we go overboard to make sure that we're extra covered. We carry extra insurance, we carry, we keep extra fire extinguishers, more than what we're required to. We try to go above and beyond. And one thing I might suggest was, like, Edgerton had it written in the rules that you had to have an Edgerton address to pull a permit. You guys might think about something like that. It helps keep more money in town. And if you do end up having that, the grocery stores, everybody benefits from it, because people have fireworks parties and that kind of stuff then, and get together, like a cul-de-sac or something might all go together on something or whatever, and so, it turns into a neighborhood watch party type thing and that kind of stuff. So there's a lot more benefit to it than what tax-wise, money-wise for the city than what, you guys brought up, but.
Mike, can I get your address for the record, please?
17035 County Line Road, Edgerton.
Very good.
Thanks.
Thank you. Chris, did you have something else?
I just want to throw in one more thing. Cleanup can be a deal. I don't know if you could, initiate some sort of a penalty to property owners for, leaving their mess and clutter out. I'm not sure how you'd enforce that, but I can understand it can be a mess. Something that we've kind of kicked around, because we've been to pyrotechnics conventions, and they'll designate an area to discharge fireworks only. So everything stays within a confined area. The cleanup's all right there. It can be highly supervised. Just something to throw out there that maybe you could think of if you had any place that could take place in the city limits. And that's all I have.
That's
Thank you. Questions from council for chief or other staff members?
Yeah, I have a couple. Chief Pruding, that wasn't a dog. That wasn't our new K-9, was it?
No.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure about that. Did you get a lot of noise complaints and fireworks complaints when the Kansas City Royals won the World Series and they were going through all that stuff last October? Did we get a lot of complaints about that? Because I know there was a lot of fireworks going off in our neighborhoods during that time period.
That's, honestly, I didn't check on that. I checked on the complaints around the 4th of July, but not that time period.
Yeah, I think every night that the Royals were winning, we were getting an hour to 2 hours of fireworks going off in the neighborhoods, and my thinking is that that's illegal, isn't it? I mean, that's not. So my question is, and the prohibiting the sale doesn't necessarily prohibit or is not prohibiting the unlawful discharge of fireworks in our community, is it?
That's correct.
And
Well, I mean, they can't use them, legally they can't use them, but that doesn't keep them from going to Spring Hill, Edgerton, Missouri, and doing it anyway. But when they're legal, you do get more people that come off the sideline and use them. So your risk go up. Now, the calls for service, we get calls for service either way. If they're illegal, people are calling. If they're legal, we get calls because of, trash falling in people's yards, people doing it after hours, people doing it in the street or the sidewalk.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's, yeah.
Yeah.
And trash is, and honestly, when they're legal, most of it is about trash. People that aren't doing it, trash is falling in their yard, people are doing it in the street in front of their house, on the sidewalk, and, you're going to get complaints either way.
Yeah, I guess the reason why I bring that up is because I know that from an enforceability perspective, it's tough to enforce.
It is.
And from a liability perspective, I think that some of the danger of especially the lower yield of fireworks is somewhat overstated. I think some of the big cases that we've seen, like the JPP case in New York, that was an M80. You're not going to sell an M80 at a fireworks stand. You're not going to sell cherry bombs or heavy, high discharge type of or high yield explosives such.
And I did see that when, you know, they have consumer fireworks, which are 1.4 gram fireworks, that the inspections at ports and everything, that a large percentage of them do not comply with the consumer fireworks regulations. So, and you're right, I mean, if you legalize it, you're not only gonna open the door for people that use them legally, but people are gonna get creative. You know, they're gonna make sparkler bombs, and they're gonna do all kinds of
Tie
stuff.
20 bottle rockets
Right.
together and.
And you bring people off the sideline that typically will not be, you know, out doing stupid things.
Yeah. I guess the thing I'm struggling with and the thing that I'm trying to get my arms around is, I understand our job up here is to protect the community and to, you know, act in their best interests. Totally get that. But individuals who choose to engage in stupid behavior are going to engage in stupid behavior regardless of what laws are on the books, unfortunately. And you know, is it our job to protect people from themselves? And that's really what it comes down to for me. And if I'm looking at, you know, civic liability, well, these sellers are going to be paying for their own liability. They're going to, you know, certify their product and things like that. So I mean, am I going in the right direction on this one, Rich? Because I know
I'm
you
all
were
about
one-
freedom, baby, that's it.
You were, I mean,
You know, and that's one of the things that I wasn't gonna talk about is, you know, personal rights, and,
yeah.
I mean, that's not why I'm up here. It would be ridiculous for me as the public safety representative to recommend that we do something that increases the risk to the public.
Sure.
And
I understand.
I'm not gonna do that. So, and you also gotta remember that, you know, one of the main causes of injury is sparklers. I mean, sparklers can burn up to 2,000 degrees, and a lot of the injuries are to children from sparklers.
Are sparklers currently illegal? I didn't think they were.
Not-
They are legal.
Yeah, even in Gardner, I think they're legal, aren't they?
No, they're not illegal in the state, no.
No,
Bottle rock-
there are legal.
Yes, they're legal, yes.
Yes. So, I mean, if they're already doing damage, I mean, but that's the thing, I mean, I hearken it to personal responsibility. I mean, I watch my kids pretty thoroughly when they do stuff, and if Mom and Dad goes, here, take this pack of sparklers and go outside and play, Johnny, and that's kind of on Mom and Dad. I can't protect them from their parents any other day but just July 4th, I mean.
Can you tell us how many citations you've written or your department's written on the discharge of fireworks?
I can't, I don't have that information. It's with iLeads, it's extremely difficult to pull that type of information. I battled that from the first week I was here. I mean, not specifically for fireworks, but for individual activity and stuff, and that's one of the reasons we're looking at a new RMS system. I don't have the capability to pull that information. I can download every single call for the year and go through it individually, but I didn't do that.
Do we know how many, does anybody know how many injuries that Gardner folks suffered prior? I mean, do we have any data at all that we can use?
Yeah, and I looked, I tried to get information from Edgerton and Spring Hill, I tried to get information from Olathe Medical Center, and the hospital information I gave you, that's from a voluntary survey, and only 45% of the hospitals in Kansas submitted information, and they weren't one of them. I contacted the Spring Hill Police Department and the county, and they didn't have any information recorded on, you know, citations, and, you know, it's a lot of times with, even when they're illegal, a lot of times it's kids involved, and the officers will give them a warning, and a lot, you know, most times they don't have all of them out. You know, we'll confiscate them if they don't stop, but typically they don't, they're not gonna take custody of a juvenile firing fireworks.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being most effective, how would you rate this ordinance in terms of how effective it is at preventing people from using fireworks
It's
in the city of Gardner?
It's probably the least effective ordinance that we have, not just here in Gardner, but anywhere. I mean, people ignore it on, I mean, to levels that there's probably no other ordinance other than maybe speeding that people ignore.
Do you know what I mean, you went over the discharge of fireworks prohibition, but, I don't recall if you really touched that much on the sale of fireworks and what's the motivation behind this ordinance? What?
Because if you sell them, people are gonna use them. I mean, that's, you know, there's, and one of the gentlemen talked about, the fire. There's in state statute, I think it's the fire marshal, can issue a ban, a burn ban, and that includes fireworks. I'm not sure how you would work around that. Some jurisdictions will refund the permit fee, which is, I mean, that doesn't do much for them because they've put so much, had such an investment in their, inventory. But, you know, that's one of the problems with, you know, if you sell them from the 27th of June till the 5th of July, and you limit the days that you can use them to the 3rd and 4th, or the 1st through the 5th, I mean, people don't usually go out and buy fireworks if they're not gonna use them. That's why if there's a burn ban and you're selling them anyway, that's, I mean, that, people aren't buying them because next year they're gonna fire them off. That's not what they do. If they're buying them, they're gonna use them. And that's one of the problems with, you know, you wanna limit the number of days they can use them because it's disruptive and it's dangerous, but the longer you sell them to get the revenue, I mean, you're just putting yourself in a situation where, again, it's difficult to enforce. You've got disparate treatment because one neighbor may call every time somebody, you know, throws a snapper down, and 2 blocks over, you've got somebody that's doing a professional display, and the neighbors don't care. So, you know, it's all who calls the police and who reports it, and that's one of the reasons why we're very liberal in giving warnings, because everybody's doing it, and you don't want to just target, you know, a limited number of individuals unless they're being overly careless or they're repeat violators.
This is the one time I appreciate you being liberal.
So let's say that we repeal this ordinance. What difference do you think you'll see on July 4th this year from last year?
I think you'll see a lot more people using them. I think that the calls for service will remain either the same or be higher, because the more people use them, the more complaints you get about trash, the more complaints you get about noise, the more complaints you get about hours. It'll just open the door for more people to use them.
So you think the ordinance is effective at keeping people from using them currently?
I don't think it keeps them from using them. I think it keeps the number down.
But you don't have any data?
Just my personal experience.
I'm gonna take this from a quality of life angle. I think there was an individual, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Just next.
I will, yeah, I'll be quick. I'm gonna take this from a quality of life, stop. I'm gonna take this from a quality of life angle. I think that, one of the folks who spoke, Adams, talked about second-tier housing and about, you know, a certain level of noise that might preclude people from engaging or purchasing homes in second-tier housing. Now, you were in KCMO, and you had areas all over the city, including some of those high-rent areas that we talked about. Did you see any kind of issues with folks around 4th of July regarding, you know, noise, and did you get more complaints from some areas of the city versus
sure.
others?
Sure. I think in the high-income areas, you see it less. Actually, you'll see fewer people from house to house, but you may see, you know, like a cul-de-sac having, you know, lighting off a professional display.
Sure.
But, yeah, there's, I don't think, and going back to Councilman Moore's point, I don't think you can sell $250,000 worth of fireworks in Gardner and not see a dramatic increase in the use. I think the convenience and the fact that it's legal would have an impact that would be very visible and very real in the city.
I'm hoping to see 200,000 of it go to Olathe, and that way we get some of that Olathe money. In fact, you guys should put a billboard on the highway, now available.
We're working on it.
Well, This one's tough for me, 'cause I enjoy fireworks, and, in fact, sometimes we go to Missouri for the Fourth so that we can light them off, but, so it's tough, but I struggle with, when you say that you think it will increase, and, you know, if it increases, that's bound to lead to more injuries and more complaints, and, so, you know, from that standpoint, I think if I look at it from a city councilman, I'd probably be more apt to keep the ordinance in force, than do away with it, so. And I don't think, in my mind, I thought maybe the revenue would be higher for the city, but some of the numbers I saw, I mean, that's not a really huge amount of money. We're talking $10,000 or so, for the liability.
Go ahead,
Can
Mayor.
I
Go
hop
ahead.
in? I promise I'll get out. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time, but Jeannie, can we go back a couple of slides to I'll tell you when. Wait, no.
That,
Not that one. Go the other direction, I'm sorry. That one. You know, this is a concern for me. It does deal with quality of life. I know, it scares seniors, I know it scares small children. People that are on the, you know, autism spectrum, I hear about, you know, fireworks currently with the ban in place, with what we hope is less usage than what we would have if we lifted the ban. People that have autistic children, you know, I'm a member at the American Legion, they're pretty consistently think about your neighbors, especially if you have an idea that they have post-traumatic stress issues. And, you know, that's great if you know your neighbor has a post-traumatic stress issue, but how do you really know? And then, of course, animals. When you think about the amount of people across the city that have animals, you know, I know it, mentioned this last year when we were discussing this. We had a big boomer go off behind my house last year, and the old number 2 dog that's halfway deaf, frightened the feces right out of him, right on the back porch. And, you know, I think those are all things that we need to take into consideration. One of the other things, and this speaks to a point that Adam brought up, is, you know, fear of fires. And I know we don't have anybody here from the fire district today, but we've got an awful lot of greenfield lands in Gardner. We've got a lot of areas where if something caught fire, there's nothing from standing in its way from burning all the way across. Larry, I know, has a pretty good idea of how much, you know, bare acreage that we've got out there, and Jason's probably got a pretty good idea of the kind of undergrowth that we get along places like the Gardner Greenway or around other park areas. I mean, these are all areas that, if they catch fire, especially in an especially hot and dry summer, that could, I would imagine, cause a big concern for public safety. And I'd just like to get your thoughts on those particular issues.
yeah, you know, there's a national campaign, it started out of Indiana for the PTSD, where veterans actually put a sign in their front yard, and it says, you know, veteran lives here, please respect something, the signs they put out. The autism and PTSD, that's information just through research that I found. And then seniors and small children, I mean, that's pretty much a no-brainer. So, and I know animals are just terrified of them.
And we get a lot of youth that Rich was talking about, if you don't pay attention to what your kids are doing, that's kind of on you as a parent. But, you know, at a certain point, you get teenagers that, you know, you would anticipate would have an opportunity to go and roam around and hang out with their friends. there again, when you start talking about the parks, greenway areas, places like that, it seems like we get a lot of complaints about kids doing whatever along the greenway areas, don't we?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So,
All right.
You know,
I have a solution for
a lot of towns will, and you'll see in most of the ordinances that you can't shoot them off on public streets,
Sure.
sidewalks, which is typically where you see people doing it because, you know, it's just more convenient and they really don't have to clean it up. But yeah, that's typically where it's done.
I have a solution for everyone. So, because we have so much time to get this done and implemented, we tasked Danica, how are you back there, to warn everybody about what's expected of them if you're gonna be shooting off fireworks. You need to clean up your mess, you need to do all that, you need to be conscious of people around you. Fireworks stand folks could actually put signs up for sale that say, we're shooting off fireworks. And just give everybody a heads up, when they buy their fireworks, they can get a sign and put it in their yard. I'd love nothing more to put a sign in my yard and warn everyone that I'm going to be making a huge statement on the 4th of July. So, and that kind of, we can hit all these points here with Danica, getting everybody ready and warned that it is legal and be prepared.
I have a feeling you make a big statement on the 4th of July, whether it's at your house or someplace else.
No comment. It's on the record.
Well, here's what it comes down to for me. It's not, if I were to support a lifting of the ban or a rework of the ordinance, I wouldn't do it for the income, and the income's negligible. It would be more of a personal rights issue for me, and it would be more of a, you know, well, if people are already doing it and, you know, the complaints are not great, they are there, I understand that. If we can have some way, and I understand the whole autism, PTSD, Downs, I mean, there's a lot of folks that if they're anywhere near a loud blast, it absolutely can trigger them, it can frighten them. And that would have to be addressed. I mean, that's something that we've got to figure out if we're gonna do this. Because those people, you know, from a quality of life perspective as well as a personal rights perspective, I'm sorry, if I'm setting off fireworks and it's having a serious physical effect on somebody, it's on me. It's on me. And, you know, that's where the personal rights kind of stop. If my behavior is affecting somebody else in a negative way and they have no control over that, then it's on me. So, I've got to be convinced that that can be addressed, and I don't know if it can be.
Ask also, and I've seen this happen before, and I don't know if there's any space to do it, but the designated fireworks areas, I don't know if there's anywhere in Gardner that would work.
We're already doing it over at Celebration.
Well,
Yeah, but those
No, I know.
professionals that are.
That's what I'm saying.
I mean, with
That's
or
the
without
area
the
we
ban.
have, and it's
Yeah.
already being tasked with.
I kind of worry about that, you know, you put too many people in a confined space.
Luckily, we can have all the medical people there.
My difficulty with the current ordinance is we don't really have any strong data to back up a full prohibition. I mean, by your own admission, we don't know how many people do this currently. We don't know how many citations we write about it. We don't know the history of it in Gardner. We don't know how many more people will see a green light and go, you know, and buy fireworks. We just don't have any data on any of it. So to have an ordinance in place that just outright bans a certain behavior based on feelings that we have is bothersome to me. I don't like doing that. I like having, this is why we're doing it, and we have a very well-defined set of data to pull from. Saying that, you know, no, Rich, you cannot shoot off fireworks because someone within a 5-mile radius of your home may be a senior, a small child, have autism, PTSD, or an animal that's sensitive to fireworks. I don't know what you do with that. I mean, of course you have to be sensitive to those things. Of course we all, we all have to be, and as human beings. But to write an ordinance that just strictly prohibits anything and everything to do with a discharge of any sort of, I mean, there's even cap guns in here. I mean, I played with cap guns when I was a kid.
Yeah, that's a little extreme.
It just seems really extreme to me. Maybe there's some room for rewording of it, and maybe we could work it out, to where
I think
we
the
could-
basis for the ban in all the cities across the country is founded in the danger. And that is well documented, and there are statistics to back that up.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't know, without having anybody from the fire district here, and that's a concern for me, because I think they've, and I'm sure that you spoke with them.
Yeah, and I actually expected them to be here, but Rob's,
He's not.
Understood.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that they've got to have some kind of data from MedAct, or hopefully they would have some data that they could access from there as well. The other thing, while I think it was good that we've had the work session, I think we've got some lines drawn in the gunpowder, I guess. You know, I do wonder if maybe we could reach out to maybe somebody from the VFW or the American Legion that has been involved in, you know, discussions or forums or whatever where this was discussed, could come and speak to that. Jennifer Smith, who's with the Heartland Autism Association, lives right here in Gardner on Main Street. She's very active with the Gardner Gold Special Olympians. And if it's not something that she feels like she's got time for, it doesn't work in her schedule, or maybe there'd be somebody better, my guess is she could probably recommend somebody, and you know, maybe somebody from the
What would be the reason for that, just out of curiosity? I mean, just to have them
Well,
confirm that people get scared? I mean, is that what?
Actually, my guess is that there's probably, they might, and if they don't, then we don't need to bring them just so that they can provide anecdotal information. But if they've got any kind of empirical data, or experience
Well,
from-
that'd be the key if we,
Yeah. I mean, my guess is that I can give you a couple of names of people that you could reach out to, but I don't think that we necessarily need to, and I'm hoping everybody agrees with this, I don't think this is something we have to move on this evening, that July 4th is still 6 months off, so.
I think if you put it on the agenda though, then those people would, if they want to
Give them
show
the
up,
opportunity.
they'd have the opportunity then to show up.
Does that sound reasonable, Chief?
that's fine with me.
So what's direction to council on this? Because I think that's kind of what they're looking for right now.
Well, I'm thinking maybe another,
Or is it staff, I mean?
I'm thinking another work session.
Okay.
You know, sometime, we've got a lot on our plates right now, we've got a lot of work sessions scheduled already. Where we can work it in,
Okay.
let's do that, we've got plenty of time. We'll give Chief plenty of time to, line up all the suspects that, the people that might wanna come.
I would like to point out too, that we, you know, even though it seems like we have a lot of time, if we look at what, set up time to figure out what the fees are and everything else we have in place, I don't want it to be like we had with the airport, where we're going to sign this and we'll change it later, and then you can get, you know, a permit.
Well, I think this is a little simpler. My guess is that if we pass something in, say, May,
Oh, yeah.
we'd
How long do you guys need? That's the thing. They need to know how much to order prior to.
Yeah, it takes,
I mean,
it takes.
we're placing our orders and picking up fireworks
Well,
now, so.
Is there any reason this couldn't be just an agenda item for a council action?
But what's our council action?
But what are we doing?
See
well,
here,
and that's,
Yes,
well,
no.
actually, we can make it a presentation, like what we're going to hear from the Midwest Public Risk people this evening.
And then vote on it?
I think, what if we,
If we don't wanna do an entire.
what if
work
we
session.
explored, what if we sent, staff away to explore other, ordinances where fireworks are not prohibited, but are allowed in
And controlled.
under certain controlled circumstances? Give us some options, maybe? I mean, does that sound?
I think that's good. I mean,
Did they not get the ordinances?
oh, we got it.
yeah, from Spring
Yeah,
Hill.
they're in.
So, we would need something drawn up for us, so we could kind of look it over and go,
Yeah,
yeah,
I've
we want
got
to
it.
do that.
Yeah.
Okay. 'Cause-
I've actually got something that Ryan hasn't looked at and Cheryl hasn't looked at, but, I mean, I've got a good start into that.
Okay, great.
Okay. Maybe after State of the City's over in March.
Okay.
First-
We're bringing it back with options, not a staff recommendation is what I think I'm hearing.
Yeah, I think options
Oh,
and
okay.
presentation at the beginning of the
Presentation.
council meeting as opposed to a work session, because it looks like we're wrapping this one up in
Okay.
45 minutes, so.
All right?
So options to amend the ordinance, to allow them?
Well, yeah, and to give an opportunity for the people that we've talked about earlier to be contacted and come and provide testimony, if the testimony they can provide is got empirical data as part of the discussion.
Maybe three options, one of them being leave it as is,
Mm-hmm.
maybe two other ones that are, one's medium restriction, one is, you know, heavily restricted.
I think,
Okay.
there you go.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't think we want a quote-unquote free fire zone, and I don't think we're gonna want no controls, because there is a quality of life consideration here, and also we wanna be able to, as much as we can, maybe control some of the response, stuff, that you guys are gonna have to deal with, so.
Sure.
I would love to hear from Chief Kirk or somebody from the fire district as
Yeah,
well.
Dennis, one of the battalion chiefs, something like
Yeah, I
that.
thought they were gonna be here.
That's
Okay.
fine. Thanks.
Well, hopefully there's not a fire, and that's why.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
All right?
Thanks, Chief.
Thanks, Jim. All right, that's it for work session. We will recess until 7 PM, at which point we will begin the council meeting for February 1st.